fight.
Just a subtle forewarning, if there's at any point throughout the video where you see me yawning, know that it's because I am really fucking exhausted, because as everyone here knows, my job loves to run a train on me, despite me going 5 long years without having a sex life.
Something's in my ass.
Hello everyone, I'm that one asshole from the first season of American Horror Story who loves to look out the window and cry while he masturbates.
Out to beat my meat.
And this is the 4th installment of Metal Guru Reviews. 4 episodes. I did not think I would get this far because I thought, honestly, that I would stop after the first one, but here we are. And here I am looking like Velvet Von Black with a dick.
Flat screen. Sweet. Gotta be fucking plasma. Better be a fucking mini bar. Ooh, hot damn, that is. You did good, monkey.
I'm jaking it. I'm jaking it. Oh.
Mumbling on about bullshit that I like for your enjoyment. Because why the hell not? And to make matters even better, it is finally getting colder outside. And that makes me horny.
Magical and full of wonder.
What the fuck are you doing, Private? You think that's a nice cock? I'll show you a nice cock, Private.
There. Telegraph a picture of this.
All jokes aside though, this is actually one that I am genuinely really excited and really giddy over, and I can't wait to start talking about it with everyone. So, without any further ado, today's episode we are going to be talking about A Bottomless Curse, A Bottomless Sea by Viile. Viile is a one-man progressive deathcore act hailing all the way from Silverdale, Washington, spawning from the mind of one John Galloway. Now, even though they're based in Washington, John is originally from Florida, and I have been following everything that he has done for many, many, many years.
This is a load of barnacles.
I heard that!
So you can already imagine the long-winded how did I discover this segment, so I would hold on, because this could be a very, very long-winded rant about absolutely nothing and everything.
Oh shit, here we go again.
When I first discovered John and his music, it was through this old streaming website called Rdio, R-D-I-O. Now, Rdio no longer exists anymore because it went bankrupt and got bought out by Pandora. That's not the point though. The point is, through Rdio I discovered many, many different bands, one of which being Rings of Saturn. Now, why is Rings of Saturn relevant to this? Because John at one point was their former vocalist, albeit not getting to record vocals with them. That said though, he did get to play keyboards on their second album, Viile. Now, throughout his career, John has played in a slew of many different bands, including Oscillator, which used to go under the name Viile Abbey, Mycelium Construct, my personal favorite, Xehanort, named after the Kingdom Hearts villain of the same name, made from stars, the Sworn In parody, Sworn Out, Hollow Hymn, and Hanami. And now he currently does vocals for another band called Imperium Bound. Many of these other bands have never really quite itched the scratch that was left behind when Xehanort broke up, but when he announced that This new project, Viile, was releasing its debut album, and when I heard the first song that we'll talk about much later, I got really excited because this was filling the void that was left behind all those years ago.
In other words, I just breathe.
Also, before I delve any further into this whole review, I just want to say one thing first. Some of these projects that he's been part of, such as Oscillator and Hanami, and even parts of Xehanort, have been collaborations between him and one of his closest friends named Brett Rutch, another talented musician who I had just recently discovered had sadly passed away. With that in mind, for anyone out there watching, if you or a loved one is suffering from mental illness of any variety, please don't be afraid to seek help. Don't be afraid to talk to anybody. Your voice is valid and needs to be heard. Now, because this is very much an underground project, if I were to give one of those hackneyed comparisons to other bands, which I hate doing, I would say for anyone who is a fan of Between the Buried and Me, you are definitely going to enjoy this. Especially if you're a fan of the Colors era of Between the Buried and Me, because a lot of things throughout this album have a lot of those nuances, especially from the ending portion of the album. Throughout a lot of this review, I'm also just going to be making a lot of callbacks to Xehanort because of how many subtle little similarities that there are throughout the album, even though compared to Viile, Xehanort are a more Black and Deathcore inspired band. Back when Black and Deathcore was way ahead of its time and actually sounded good. No thanks to bands like fucking Lorna Shore, Awaken Providence, and so on and so forth. Thank you for ruining an entire generation of deathcore. And I said what I said, fuck all of you.
Said what I said.
Now, before deconstructing everything too, I also wanna talk about all the people who are featured throughout the album too. There are a lot of, well, not a lot of, but a good handful of guest performances. The main one that's throughout the album is a lot of guitar work by longtime collaborator Ainsley Gunther. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, so if anyone watching actually knows, please correct me. Aside from him, we also have guest vocal performances from Gabe Reese of Centerless, Tachi's singer Thomas Gabrielli, and Gabrielle Gloria, who is of the bands Annex Void and Black Note Graffiti. I will pinpoint where each of them features throughout the whole review, so with that being said, let's get into it.
Yeah, get into it!
To compare apples to oranges here, one thing you can immediately pick out from his time with Xehanort to now is just his overall growth when it comes to his composition skills and his vocals especially the vocals. For instance, let's start with the beginning of the album and let's compare it to the debut of Xehanort, Awaken in a Different Dimension. Awaken in a Different Dimension starts off with a song called Entry 1, Unknown. And that one is very slow, but heavy all at once. It's a slow build up to something grand. For Vile's first song, A Bottomless Curse, it's only a minute long, but it still gets its message across right away. The guitar rhythm you will also hear segments of throughout the album and will even recur at the beginning of the final track, A Bottomless Sea. Now, A Bottomless Curse is very high octane. It's an instant punch in the face, right away. Much like with everything from Awaken in a Different Dimension, everything on this album seamlessly bleeds into one another. So like the first song, A Bottomless Curse, fades immediately into the ancient city without even second thought, which is why you need to be able to listen to this entire album, or any other album that is similar to this, or similarly does this, from cover to cover. Otherwise, you're not getting the full effect. When it comes to a lot of the vocal work throughout the album, John primarily stays at the lower, almost guttural tones, but not quite. But then when he goes to a higher pitch, it's a more raw sounding, I think the technical term is vocal fry. It's very nasty, gnarly, and raw sounding. If I were to compare the highs here to any other songs from Xehanort, I would say a much older one called The Desolate One. Now also, coupled with the highs and lows of the harsh vocals, you have beautiful singing, which you can really feel throughout this album. He is singing from the heart. And aside from that too, you also have a lot of spoken word segments, whether they are slow or fast, throughout different select songs throughout the album, as well as the use of vocoder, which he has been doing for years. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what a vocoder is, it's kind of like a piano, or honestly, a talk box. Essentially kind of like a talk box, where instead of having that plastic tube in your mouth, singing into it and playing the keys to make it match a pitch, you're doing that with just a microphone plugged into a synthesizer. A lot of musicians do this. Most prominently, I would say, for pop music, a basic example would be Imogen Heap. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up the song Hide and Seek. Or just listen to Jason Derulo's What You Say. It's the same chorus.
What you say, oh, that you only meant well, cause you did, what you say, that it's all for the best, cause it is.
But a lot of metal bands that also include vocoder would be Cynic, The Faceless, An Abstract Illusion, and a couple more, primarily within the prog genre.
To the new rock and metal fans that are actually wondering what the term prog means, I will explain it to you in a very short way. I've written down some notes here to kind of help me out with this, because I can't freeform think anything nowadays. So this is the best I can do. Now, prog is just a short word for progressive, and if you're wondering what progressive means, this is the explanation I have. Progressive, in musical terms, refers to a genre-bending approach that expands conventional boundaries through complex, intricate, and often experimental techniques, which emphasizes artistic approaches or explorations, depending on how you look at it, and incorporates long, non-linear compositions, intricate arrangements, and odd time signatures, and blending diverse influences like classical or jazz or any other style of music you might think of, and it will incorporate that into either rock or electronic or metal. For a few examples, when it comes to progressive rock, you have Rush, Jethro Tull, Pink Floyd, Genesis, and many, many more. Now, when it comes to prog metal, I have a lot of examples here, so just be prepared for the amount of examples I have, just because this is my favorite genre. When it comes to progressive metal, you have Dream Theater, Tool, Opeth, Mastodon, Fallujah, Rivers of Nile, Blood Incantation, Meshuggah, Between the Buried and Me, and many, many more. The genre just never ends when it comes to it, and that's why it is so epic and one of my favorite genres to listen to. So, that's the explanation on what the term prog is, in case you are a newer metalhead or rock and roll fan.
Long before the album was even released, the first song and only song that was released to promote this project was Into the Snare. I think roughly 4 minutes in length, maybe a little longer, but it is a constant juxtaposition between high tempo intensity coupled with the mix of harsh vocals and cleans coming from both John himself and from Gabe Reese. I think Gabe Reese is right before the chorus section, in that almost kind of breakdown bit. You can tell the differences in their voices because I think Gabe's is a little lower. And aside from that, after the chorus, we have the solo section from Ainsley. Like I said, Ainsley does a lot of the guitar work throughout the entirety of the album, even though most of it is all programmed. But that's hardly the point. Everything here is just masterfully crafted, masterfully done. And the juxtaposition of all the harsh parts and the soft parts, whether it be within the music or within the vocals, not just for this song, but all of them, kind of complement each other very well. Immediately after Into the Snare, I think, is a song that stands out the most just because of its progression throughout its duration. We have A Toll Beyond All Means. Now, throughout the beginning of the half of the song, or like beginning portion, is basically kind of like just all percussion and simple chugging. Percussion almost gives it that tribal feeling, and most of the vocal work in that whole beginning section is done by Gabrielle Gloria. And then as the song starts to pick up, it transitions to John. Now, right in the middle of the song is where it gets really interesting, for lack of a better word. There is this slow, dreadful, almost like build up to a breakdown, where it's just uncomfortably long, elongated notes, coupled with sound bites of children crying, as well as both John and his wife, Nicole, basically giving blood-curdling screams to evoke the sound of almost being stabbed to death, which is what I gathered from looking up stuff about the music. It's kind of weird because John records all this stuff at home, so the fact that none of his neighbors disturbed him while Nicole was screaming for dear life speaks volumes. Plus, I know that he would never do anything to hurt her. John is the farthest thing from Tim Lambe's sis that we will ever get. This next song that follows, Languish Sin Die, is probably one of the biggest standouts on this album for me personally, despite it being only roughly over 2 minutes in length, making it the second shortest on the album. The reason why I say this stands out the most is because the whole first minute of the song is a atmospheric, beautiful, yet haunting reverie. Kind of like an interlude before jumping right back into the madness. After a minute in, from hearing the beautiful atmospheric guitar work and John singing, it throws you right back in. Remember how earlier I mentioned that parts of the album are very reminiscent of Between the Buried and Me? This is where I believe it starts. Revelation 1, what occult forms emerge. It has a lot of that weird juxtaposition that they're known for. And like a minute in too, it features the vocal segment from Thomas Gabrielli. But what really got me thinking about it was the near end of the song, which delves into this weird accordion section that made me think of Between the Buried and Me's song called Glide, which is on their album Automata 2. Now, aside from thinking of this, obviously the accordion section is also a callback to Awoken in a Different Dimension song, entry number 5, Cerberus, because the ending of Cerberus features that rhythmic accordion section at a much slower pace than this. Now, as the accordion section in this progresses and it gets crazier, it immediately delves into Revelation Part 2. Despair hangs so densely upon you, keeping that same rhythmscape going, minus the accordion. The final song on the album, A Bottomless Sea, is the longest on the album, coming in at 12 minutes and 2 seconds. Now, to me, immediately when thinking of Xehanort, I think of the last song on the original version of Awaken in a Different Dimension, The Missing Pages, which is all spoken word, but it's basically a summary of what the story was that occurred throughout the album. Now, even though this is not a spoken word song, it gave me that same sense. But here's where it differs. Firstly, let's begin with how, in the beginning, it plays that same intro rhythm that it did in A Bottomless Curse. Now, when you look at some of the linear notes, or even the lyrics for the album, you will notice that this song is divided into 3 segments. The first segment being called The Arrival, the second segment being called The Exchange, and the final being called The Choice. Each of these segments kind of change within every 3 or 4 minutes throughout the album, and you can definitely tell when it comes to how he juxtaposes the music throughout the song and when he starts laying his vocals down for all of these parts. For me, I think the best of all these segments is The Choice, because it starts off primarily with singing, and then it kind of takes the heaviness away to just give a beautiful melody, coupled with his beautiful voice. This carries on for, I think, a little over a minute before jumping back in for that grand finale, that grandiose punch in the face to end it all. That's another thing I forgot to mention throughout this review. John's style of lyric writing is very elegant. A lot of it is very intricately done, and especially in the past, when I was listening to Awaken in a Different Dimension for the very first time, it was very inspiring to me, especially because I do a lot of writing myself. So, to see that carry over all these years later is always an amazing thing to see. Now, if I were to give a final rating for this album, I think I would also give it 9 out of 10, just because, as opposed to everything that he was doing with Xehanort, this feels like now a fully realized sound that he wants to go for. Like, in the beginning, there's this comparison of you're looking for a house, you're looking to buy a house, and you're just looking for the perfect fit. With Viile and with this album, I think he has finally found the perfect fit, everything that works best for him. And I can't wait to see how he follows this up in the future.